All right, welcome back to the Ottawa studios of Inside My Canoe Head. I am your host, Dr. D. Today, we are setting up and talking about it. Yes, we are. It is time to talk about how to set 2025 up to be your year of adopting preparedness. So sit back, grab yourself your favorite beverage. Let's get at her. Nothing like a fresh beat, and we are on the eve and the dawn of 2025. Thanks again for joining us here at Inside My Canoe Head. And again, as we close out the year, I want to thank you once again for all of your contributions, your emails, your submissions, your comments, your social media commentary, and everything else that we get here at Inside My Canoe Head that helps shape our content. Remember, everything we do here is for free, along with the Substack articles that I write, and the YouTube channel that will hopefully, by the time you hear this, will be fixed and up and running. A couple of permission problems with that. Just wacko stuff I didn't think existed, but here we are. That's our free platform. It's our community service to provide to you a non-apocalyptic, evidence-based preparedness education for rational people. So those who don't think that Chicken Little societal collapse is going to come down, those who don't think that 2 years food in your basement is helpful, or that you're going to have to fight off and defend your house against marauding armed gangs of crazy people. We are rational. We are intelligent. Everything that you hear here at Inside My Canoe Head is based upon the latest evidence, not belief and not opinion. And I want to be crystal clear about that. I know I say it every episode, but I reiterate that so that you understand what we talk about here and what comes onto this program is only rational stuff. And I'm sorry for those that are hoping for the apocalyptic descriptor. There's a whole bunch of other crazy nuts all over YouTube, and there's even some crazy nut apocalyptic podcasts out there about the coming slaughter of the human race. Feel free to find them. I have no idea who they are. I just hear about them all the time. But we want to set up 2025 for success. So by now, if you listen to any motivational speakers and you've ever clicked on a single motivational video on YouTube or on Instagram, your feed has been inundated over the last week with a series of people telling you exactly the steps you need to take so that 2025 is your year, whether it's going to be ghost mode or monk mode, where you're going to disappear and reemerge as something everybody will stop when you frame yourself in the doorway and they'll be amazed at your achievements. Or that's finally the year that you're going to hit the gym for longer than 2.5 weeks, or that your diet is going to, whatever, right? Every motivational video talks to you about, here are the 5 steps. The ones you should pay attention to are the ones that talk about, this is what worked for me. It's a frame that we learn a lot in persuasion and influence techniques. When you're talking to a customer base and you're speaking about how you want people to engage, one of the things that works really, really well and resonates is when you talk about the truth. What did you actually do to transform your thinking, right? And I've periodically talked about things that I've done here on the podcast. I don't make it a principal effort of what we do, but I've talked about my entrepreneurial journey, right? I started Preparedness Labs Incorporated, the parent company of this podcast, back in 2020. In July of 2020, 4 months after I started the podcast Inside My Canoe Head, which was an April 28th, 2020 debut was the first episode. And I started it because I realized that as much as the podcast was a lot of fun to do, that we needed to give people rational preparedness education, that preparedness wasn't framed correctly as I saw it or as I viewed it in the lexicon that was being used, in the nomenclature, and that I saw preparedness as a really unique way to imagine the pathway or the roadmap from chaos to calm. Right? Because really, if you remember, and it seems like an eon or an age ago, if you remember what your world felt like in March to the first summer of 2020, 2 weeks to flatten the curve, all the things people were saying, we didn't have a vaccine at the point, irrespective of whether you think the vaccine was useless or not, or it was effective. I could care less on your opinion. We didn't have it. We were talking about a probable likely vaccine in the coming 5 to 6 month time frame. But at that time, we simply had no defense against something we also didn't understand. It was the power of uncertainty that was overwhelming. Now, fear absolutely is part of that, but most of what we understand human psychology to be, fear is the most powerful emotion. But what gets fear fired up, for lack of a better term, what gets fear engaged and fueled is a measure of uncertainty. And uncertainty just simply means that you are either not aware of what is really going on, or you're aware of what's really going on, but you're not able to figure out or understand what is likely going to be the outcome. So there is a level of uncertainty that everybody faced in the beginning to the mid part of the 2020s that led me to believe that I needed to package preparedness education better. I needed to deliver and try through my own efforts to change the way the conversation was being held. Now, you can decide 4 years later whether I was successful or not. But the point being, it resonates well when you talk to people about your entrepreneurial journey, right? I'm not a multimillionaire. My company hasn't even hit 6 figures yet, right? We had our first profitable year this year. So I've got an entrepreneurial journey where I started something out of thin air, and over 4 years, I turned it to be profitable. Yeah, it's a 4-figure profit, my friends, but it's profitable. The point being is, when you have a story to tell and you are authentic and truthfulness, and hopefully over the last 4.5 years and 300 plus episodes, my message has been consistent, and I can be at least viewed as a trustworthy individual. That call's yours. That has nothing to do with me, and it has everything to do with you. Whether I've proven by what I've done here to be a trustworthy individual, I've got a story to tell and tell it. That is one way of figuring out how people change their lives. So when you're looking at the multitude of motivational videos and things that are out there, I would offer that is a genuine way of evaluating what is happening. Are people telling you what to do, or are people telling you what worked for them and why it worked for them? Because I've always said in preparedness, I can't give you a downloadable filler PDF that's going to be a family preparedness plan. People will create them and say, do the following 7 things and you'll be prepared. I don't know you. I don't know your life. I don't know your hopes and dreams. And the way we frame preparedness is, first, it's all about you understanding the strategy, the goals, and what you're after. And then you wrap that in a blanket of preparedness, because preparedness as a phenomenon or as a philosophy, its goal is to insulate your dreams from outside events and shocks, right? So all these crazy, chaotic things can continue to happen in the world, but because you've adopted preparedness and built a preparedness plan for you, your family, and for whoever you're responsible for, you're able to continue to chase your dreams despite the chaos that's going on around you. That's why we frame preparedness in that methodology, because it's different than just sitting back, putting your thumb in your mouth, grabbing your non-perishable food and bottled water, and trying to survive a hurricane, right? We don't view that as, well, it is an element of preparedness. It's about slightly less than 20% of preparedness philosophy is related to natural disasters. We use it as a great way to start the conversation in preparedness because there's a familiarity to it. Then we move people and students far beyond natural disasters, and we get into the other Pareto problem, the other 80% of what preparedness actually represents in your life as a philosophy. But when we're looking at transformative periods, people often take the end of a year or a birthday or a wedding anniversary or the birth of a child or, God willing, a grandchild. People often look at monumental times in life as points of reflection. Sometimes they're points of pivot. Sometimes they're point of inflection or reflection. The point is that don't pass up the opportunity to have a conversation with yourself about what your goals are. Now, whether they're tied to the January 1st date, I always found it hard with January 1st. There was a period in my time in my 30s when I did try to do a lot of New Year's resolutions. I, however, picked the 15th of January. Why? It's easier to get into the health clubs. By then, most people have screwed up their New Year's resolutions and have given up on anything. And you get to watch the fireworks while you're still eating bonbons and pizza and drinking beer because you don't have to make any changes yet. As funny as that may be, the rationale behind all of that things that I was doing is I was placing hope in a change of a date or a monumental time would somehow trigger something within me that would focus my attention and focus my motivation, my discipline, and all of the necessary elements on reaching a goal. But what I had done is convinced myself that the time was the goal, not the goal itself. So I'm a big fan of using New Year's Eve in around New Year's as a reflection point. Far less, and we're going to get to how I set up the year for success in a minute. But I use, and I would always recommend, and this is what's worked for me, is using it as a reflection. How'd I do? And it's an honest question that only you can answer. This isn't, asking your family, were you a good spouse? Were you a good parent? Asking your employer, was I a good employee this year? Did I do good things? Ask yourself in the mirror the tough question. How'd I do? How did I do? And be honest with yourself. And as crazy it may seem, and sometimes you have to do it out of earshot, I have this conversation with myself out loud looking at the mirror. And it's uncomfortable. I would suggest to you that it needs to be, but it's a reflection of simply saying, how'd I do? What was I thinking in January, February timeframe, and just in generalities of where I saw this year filling out? How'd it work? What lessons did I learn? What went well and what didn't meet what I thought would happen? And then ask myself a really interesting question. If I had to do it again, what would I do different? Right? It's always the $1 million question, but I find this one so impactful for me. As I ask myself, if I had to do 2024 over again, what would I have done differently? What choices did I make that I would make differently? Now, it's not because I made a choice and it didn't work out. Oh, I'll just change everything so the right outcome happens. That's not the point of those questions. The point of the question is, at times I made an informed decision and it turned out to be the incorrect decision. Great. It was an informed decision. What did I learn from that? But what would I have done differently? When I faced with a significant legal issue a couple of months ago, longtime listeners of the podcast will remember I was bounced around a little bit by a legal threat. And so part of my reflection this year is like, how did I handle that? How did I navigate the first real legal and financial threat against the very existence of my company? Something that I created out of thin air, something that I'm very, very proud of, and something that we're very definitely trying to make a difference in the community and help people out. And it was under very real threat from an external force. It worked out. That external force was put to bed. Let's just put it that way. But the point is how did I do? How did I do through that? I was successful. So you might want to high five yourself in the mirror and you did a great job, right? Way done, Jeff. No, I need to know. I need to reflect. How'd I do and what would I done differently? So that's the reflection that I use. And it's not a critical of you dumb arse, as we say in the East Coast. No offense to anybody. You dumb arse, what'd you go and do that for? It's not that kind of conversation, right? It's an honest to goodness. Now, I talk about libations a lot. My wife seems to think I'm trying to be a closet alcoholic or something. Grab yourself your favorite beverage. Let's get at her. Mine's black coffee. Everybody seems to think I'm a raging you-know-what. But I do. I sit down with... I like a really expensive whiskey. It's just a treat that I like. I don't drink a lot. But I like an expensive whiskey. on a couple of nice ice cubes, and I sit down with a nice glass in a quiet place, if you can find it around New Year's, usually the day after, the second, third of January, when things are a little bit calmer. And I just kind of reflect on, what did 2024 look like? And I ask myself these questions because it's important when I think about strategy. Now, that's what I do to think about the past. What do I do for the future? How do I set up 2025 for success? Well, I'm going to tell you exactly what works for me. This is part of the strategy, and I've built this into our strategy chapter that's in our video course, Adopting a Prepared Life, that's available over at preparednesslabs.ca. 199 Canadian, a lot less American due to the exchange rate. Comes with a lot of benefits. Jump over there and check it out. I'm not going to give you an ad for it right now. But in that course is a chapter on strategy. It's about, if you're not sure what to do, where you're going, what your life should look like, I'm not sure how to reach my goals, etc. It's a methodology that worked for me. I looked at the literature, I looked at some of the best writers around, and I sat down and I figured out what would work for me. It worked for me, and then I replicated it in the course program. And it basically is not a set of steps. It's a set of expressing where you want to be, right? The first thing and foremost is always to not beat yourself up about where you are, okay? Those of you that know me personally or that have been following the podcast know I'm on a weight loss journey. I was 238 pounds, okay? I'm a little bit less than that. I think I'm down to about 215, 212 right now, and I'm on my way to 180 pounds, okay? I'm on a journey. It's not going to happen overnight. It took me a really long time to add the weight on, and it's going to take me time to get it off. But what works for me is I sit down and I don't beat myself up because I ate the bonbons, buddy, because I mowed down on the chippies while I was watching the hockey game, right? I could sit there and beat myself up for days about all the beer, whatever. It doesn't matter, right? It's not that I forget it. It's that I'm not going to go on a blame game and beat myself down. I refuse to talk negatively about decisions that I've made in the past. It's all about learning lessons. So it is what it is. I am where I am. And so I start from that point of personal acceptance and personal reflection, because if I'm going to be successful, if I'm going to implement any change that's based on a date, a year, or whatever, what has never worked for me is when I started off with an attack on my personal character and achievement, right? If I start off the conversation by, because you ate too much food and you got your arse fat, now you're overweight, you feel horrible, bloated, and ugly, and you don't like yourself naked in the mirror, turn around and change it. That's not going to work for me. And it's probably not going to work for you either. But if I start off at saying, okay, where would I like to be? And it's a generalist question, but I categorize it into 5 areas of life, and this is in our strategy chapter there in the video course. And it talks about, first is myself. And when I talk about myself, I mean my physical health, my mental health, and my financial health. Really, we talk about that at the beginning of the book that I wrote that's available on Amazon as well, is after you accept personal responsibility from your outcomes, the first thing you do in preparedness is figure out to get your body, your mind, and your money in shape. If you don't do those 3 things, the rest of what you do in preparedness is pointless, because you're not going to be any good to help anybody else in the world. Imagine if the world goes pear-shaped, as I like to say, or the shizzy hits the fizzy, and you're overweight, out of shape, stressed to the 9, anxious as hell, and broke. Now, is that the way you want to challenge and take on an emergency or a disaster or a crisis in the family when they're looking for a leader and you hobble up and barely can get your arse off of the couch and you're overweight and you're out of shape and you feel tired all the time and you're stressed and you're anxious and you're broke as heck? Is that the way to start an emergency? Absolutely not. It's like the old adage, when you go to war with the army you have, not the army you want. So the point being is you start there. So I start at my physical health, my mental health, my financial health, the state of my relationships, my profession, and my leisure. 6 areas. Very simple. And I'm a whiteboard guy. Some people are whiteboard guys. Some people are, pieces of paper girls. Some people are Excel spreadsheet people. Everybody has a way of recording data and visualizing. Humans are visual creatures. So whether you use Apple Notes the notes on a Google's phone because I don't know Android stuff, a whiteboard. I use Hilroy scribblers, the same one that I used when I was in elementary school in the 1970s, because the pages don't fall out of them and I don't lose them. Whatever works for you. And I basically lay out where I want to be in each of those 6 areas. And a very honest reflection. From a physical health perspective, where do I want to be? That's not where do I want to be in 3 months? Where do I want to be in 2 months? Where do I want to be in 6? No. What state of my physical health would make me proud and happy? And I would be joyful. What about mental health? What about financial health? What about the state of my important relationships? I'm married to my high school sweetheart, and I'm incredibly fortunate for that. This December 27th, I should know this off the top of my head, is my 33rd wedding anniversary. That's the key relationship in life. Your spouse is full stop. And I get in trouble. I don't get in trouble. People disagree with me. My wife's more important than my kids. I love my kids. My 2 sons are wonderful human beings. They're incredibly intelligent individuals, and I love them both to death. But my wife is more important. My wife is my life partner, right? That's the number one relationship. And then I have to look at my profession. Whatever profession I've decided to undertake as a human being, both in a professional sense to earn an income and any significant voluntary effort that I do, where does that need to be? Where would I like it to be? And then I look at leisure, right? Because I'm a human being with stuff who loves to do. I'm an avid backcountry paddler, AKA welcome to Inside My Canoe Head, right? My passion for 40 years has been going down gnarly backcountry rivers, bombing around on trips, flipping my canoe repeatedly upside down, much to the chagrin of one of the hosts of Epic Podcast, Grayson, who I put him in the ditch last trip. I apologize to him. Sorry about that fishing rod, bud. But it's my passion, right? But I also like to do other things. I like to hunt. I like to fish. I like to downhill ski. I like to do a bunch of things. And leisure is really important to you as a human being. It's tied very tightly to your mental health. So in generality, when I look at where I want to be, I categorize things in those 6 fields. Now, people will tell you they have to be SMART goals, simple, measurable, actionable, and I forget the acronym. There are 25 or more systems out there that you will find in books, on YouTube, and elsewhere of people telling you how to build your goals. I'm telling you, for me, it's a simple expression of where I would like to be. Where would I like my physical health to be? Where would I like my mental health to be? Maybe you're unlucky like me and you have one of those crazy acronyms and a mental health injury. Whatever it may be, you need to navigate life and how you're going to improve that. You just figure it out. Where do you want to be? And then and that's what I write in the right-hand side of the column. So I put these headings at the top, and the left-hand side of the column is today, right-hand side of the column is where I want to be. So physical health, and I list them all down, and then I figure out I want to be 180 pounds. Now, is it exactly 180 pounds? I'm an average guy, right? It's really hard to hit you go up and down a couple of pounds plus or minus every week. So on or about, it's a great legal term, right? You hear it all the time in legal studies. On or about the 18th of December, blah, blah, blah happened, right? So on or about 180 pounds. It's something that I can measure. When do I want to be there? Oh, hell, I'll take tomorrow, please. Bob, I'll take door number 3. Like, really? No. I want to be at 180 pounds. That's my physical weight. I use weight because it's something that a lot of people express a desire to change in life. I want to be 180 pounds. I sat down on the left-hand side and I stood on a scale, right? I sucked it up, princess. I stood on a scale. The scale told me I was 238 pounds at 5'11". It's a freaking hippopotamus, according to me. And so I realized at 238, that was 58-pound difference. Okay? How do you eat an elephant? You eat an elephant in chunks. How do I chunk up 58 pounds? 58 divided by 6 is, roughly 9 and a bit. So I put it in 10-pound increments. For me, seeing that the next goal is near and achievable to get to made it realistic, right? So my goal was not to get to 180, it was to get from 238 to 229. Then my next goal was to get from 229 to 219. And the one I'm working on right now is to get to 209, right? So that's how, for me, it's laid out, editable chunks. Now, it's a roadmap from where I am now, again, not beating myself up, not slamming my head for all the bonbons and chippies that I shoved down the pile while I was sitting on the couch watching hockey or whatever the heck I was watching. I didn't do that. What I did is realize that here I am. It is what it is. And here's where I want to be. Here are the edible chunks and a roadmap from left to right. And I start working on it. And so when I do each one of those, you get these, you have your today's real world when it comes to your leisure activities. You know, right now I'm doing this or I'm not doing it. And I'd like to be doing this. Okay, how do I get from A to B? And you figure it out. The reason I like that is it's not, I'm going to go to the gym 7 times a week. I'm going to start eating the carnivore diet only. I'm going to OMAD 1 meal a day. I'm going to start 75 hard. Like, all of these programs are very well designed from a marketing perspective. I don't want to call them gimmicks. They're very well designed from a marketing perspective to key in and provide a hook that gets people attached, interested, and want to follow them. My argument is that my goal is to get to 180 pounds, not go to the gym 7 days a week, right? I focus on what my goal is. Now, how does a man of 54 years old lose weight? That's a separate question to ask, and that's what I then figure out once I know the roadmap that I'm on, right? So now I know where I want to be. I have my 6 areas. I have the right-hand side of my board clearly says what I would like to be doing. If I could write it right now without any preconditions, what would I like to be doing? I'm also a realist, right? I'd love to do 50 pull-ups in a row. Ain't happening, right? So I'm a realist about what it is that I would like to do, and I'd be very happy, very joyful, and very comfortable if the end result of those 6 categories came true, right? Personal, physical health, financial health, mental health, my relationships, my professional life, and my leisure. Very simple thing. I'm on the road to a new standard in each one of those. Some of them are going to be a lot quicker and will be achieved in a short period of time. And so this is how I do goal setting for 2025. So I will do this in my downtime after I open up a can of Shutdown I think I'm checking my calendar right now while I'm recording this, and I'm looking at my appointment for Friday the 20th at 9 p.m. or 2100 for you Army guys. There is a calendar appointment called Can of Shutdown for those of you who get what that reference is. Then I'll start that really reflective point, and I'll sit back and I'll look at the previous set of process that I'm on. But I do it as part, and I review this every month. Now, I review it every month because that's what we recommend on the video course and in my books as your preparedness plan, right? And this part of strategy setting and checking in to see how you're doing is a regular part of checking in on your preparedness, because we recommend, and I recommend that if you check on preparedness more than once a month for more than 30 minutes, you're probably doing it wrong. And that's the extent. Now, that's a rough order of magnitude. You can be a little bit longer and life will be fine. But that's the rough order of magnitude of the amount of time and effort that once you get the plan is set, and once you do the upfront work, the maintenance work is simply no more no more time consuming than that. So I'm a Sunday morning calm and relaxed kind of guy. So Sunday mornings, I have a little appointment booked in my calendar on a monthly basis, and I basically open up the preparedness plan. I have a look around. I check on these 6 areas to see how I'm doing and progressing towards what I want. And then I'll see if things are working well or not working well, what needs adjustment, what doesn't need adjustment, verify that my trifecta of preparedness plans are okay, that my timeline is still maintained, I can meet the animalistic requirements of those for who I'm responsible, etc. A couple of quick checks, shut her down and go off and carry on, have a great life. Because that's what preparedness does, is it wraps your life in a blanket of protection. And so 2025, just like 2024 or 2027, if you're fortunate enough to be around for that, all of these dates are opportunities for you to sit back and take stock. Now, I've said to you that for me, it very much works as using a point of reflection, of sitting back and asking myself an honest, how'd you do, bud? What went well? And if you had to do it all over again, what big decisions would you do differently? Why? And how do you think they would have turned out? And it's a bit of self-reflection. Like I said, with my favorite little drink, which I don't drink very often, but when I do, I like to have a very nice glass of expensive scotch. And I reflect and consider these questions. And then I sit back and say, okay, understanding all of that and how that reflection exercise went on like the last 6 months or the last 3 months, or if it's the end of the year, the last year, I then sit down and I look at my goal paperwork and I say, okay, these 6 areas that the way I categorize life, because it makes sense for me, how am I doing? And how close am I to where I need to be? Do I need to readjust those goals? So that you that might follow the podcast pretty closely understand I had a pretty significant oopsie on the medical side come October this year. I was in for surgery, a couple of days in the hospital, something that I was not planning on, something that I was unaware of that needed to be taken care of. And when you sit down and the doctor tells you in August that you're going in for surgery the first week of October in 6 weeks, and there's a 50-50 shot they're going to find cancer, it's a pretty awesome, life-changing, and I don't mean awesome from wonderful. It's a pretty impactful shock to your system because it puts everything in perspective. If you don't have your health, you don't have anything else. You have 100 problems until you have a health problem, and then you have one problem. And so lucky I was fortunate enough. The first thing the surgeon said out of his mouth when he talked to my wife when he came out of the operating room was, there isn't cancer. There's no tumor. My wife even wrote it on the coffee pods at the back of the house. Big no tumor, and I took a picture of it to remember. I'm fortunate. A lot of people are not. But that little experience put a little bit of jets in my realization that at age 54, I'm not getting younger. I'm not really old, but I'm not getting younger. And I'm going to rage against the machine, and I'm going to do whatever I can to fight aging to the greatest extent possible. So that was a pretty important reflective point, right? That was a point in my life. I didn't need a December 31st to tell me that this was the time to sit back and think. So just don't think about regular days or regular days in the calendar. Sometimes impactful events will kind of key you up and give you this opportunity to pause and consider, maybe there's something here I need to have a look at. So what I'm really hoping that you'll take from this podcast is understanding I offered what worked for me, how I plan for the next year or at the next time period, how I think it organizes well for me. I'm not really going to make massive predictions or as of, I'm going to eat a pizza Sunday night because Monday morning I'm going to start a healthy diet. I've tried that 107 times and failed 107 times. What I've realized is I have to be nice and kind to myself, but I have to be disciplined, right? So if my wife hands me a bonbon and says, try this, it's a new one, I'm going to try it. I'm not going to say, oh, I'm sorry, I'm in the middle of a carnivore diet, I can't eat. So hopefully this is helpful for you. Hopefully you take away some nugget of truth, something that assists you. However you do it, be nice to yourself. Sit back and don't beat yourself up. You are where you are, and it is what it is. Take today as an opportunity to sit back and reflect and say, hey, here I am, warts and all, but I decided that today is a day I'm going to change. And now I'm going to do an exercise in laying out where I would like to be. in areas the areas that I use are just an example. You can figure out whatever methodology you want, whatever great book that you have, but figure out a strategy of where you would like to be, and then figure out a strategy that gets you there in a doable fashion, right? You're not going to drop it all in 30 days. I tried that once and I lost like 20 plus pounds in 30 days, and I felt good for about a day or two, and then I started rewarding myself for doing a good job, and in no time I was right back after. Take care of yourself. Be nice to yourself, but understand, again, if my experience teaches you anything, if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. Your mental health is more important than your income. That is a question a lot of people can't balance. You can always figure out a way to make money without bending your brain around sideways. Hopefully you take the time to enjoy yourself over the holiday season. Hopefully you take the time to enjoy the New Year's. Excited, enjoy it, have a wonderful time. Remember that it is your responsibility to make any changes that come up. Give yourself the time and space to do it. Don't set yourself up for failure by making massively unreasonable expectations of yourself. What would success look like in 2025? Maybe it's something simple. Maybe it's an achievement. When you sit back on the 31st of December in 2025 and you look back at the year, do you want to be proud of yourself? Do you want to say, hey, I made the right choices. I was kind to myself. I was kind to others. I was a good human being, and I improved my life in all 6 areas. That, my friends, is how I would define success. Happy New Year. Enjoy yourselves. Have a great time, and we'll see you in 2025. Take care and stay safe.